Good morning, everyone. It's another edition of Atheneum Spotlight with Guy McLain, and I'm Mark Auerbach, and we're here to talk about all good things Atheneum. How's it going, Guy?
Very good, very good. It's a great time of year because we're planning all these fall activities, and so it's exciting. I'm getting tired just thinking about everything we've got going in the fall here.
Well, fall actually hasn't started. I mean, I would like to push summer another couple of weeks.
Well, and with the heat, it feels like summer's going to last a lot longer. But actually, fall's right around the corner. So we're gearing up. I mean, this is a great time of year to have a lot of programming, a lot of activities at the Atheneum, and that's exactly what we're doing. We've got a really full schedule this fall.
Yeah, we should be talking about, of course, pumpkin spice is back everywhere, and white shoe season goes till Memorial Day of next year, and school's back in session, and you've got so many things going. The first thing I want to talk about was I saw, I follow the Atheneum schedule and calendars and everything, and the last time we were together, you were talking about the Atheneum's Tanglewood trip.
Yes.
And lo and behold, there's a trip coming to Boston for the Boston Symphony.
Yes, we're really excited about this. The Tanglewood trip was a lot of fun. Everybody really enjoyed it. We filled the bus. So we're going with an even larger bus this time around. The trip's on October 29th to the Boston Symphony. It's going to be a great concert. They're doing Beethoven's Emperor Concerto, the Concerto Number 5, which is a really majestic, wonderful piece of music. And it's by Misuko Ochida, the great Japanese virtuoso, is going to be the pianist. She's such an incredible artist. So I think that I'm really looking forward to hearing her perform the work. And then the second half of the concert, the Boston Symphony is doing Shostakovich's Symphony Number 5, which is an incredible work, and it's got a great story behind it. That was a time when Stalin was in power, and there was all these purges going on and this kind of thing. And Shostakovich had just written an opera called Lady Macbeth of Minsk. Wonderful opera, but Stalin didn't like it. He thought it was degenerate, and all those kind of terms that the Soviet Union always used in that era when they didn't like something, or they felt that it was controversial or something. They called it degenerate, and so it was condemned by Stalin. And Shostakovich actually thought that he was going to wind up, in prison somewhere or in Siberia.
So when Stalin would condemn a work of art, a ballet or an opera, did that make the public want to go out and see it because it was condemned?
Well, of course, the problem is that the performances were immediate. I mean, the opera had been really popular. Everybody was going to it until Stalin decided to go and showed up and didn't like it. And then, boy, the performances were canceled immediately.
Because if you see something here, like I'm not sure what the exact example might be culturally, and somebody would say that is degenerate and condemned, that means lines form around the block because that's what Americans want to see.
That's right.
So I'm just curious if Lady Macbeth from Intense was like once Stalin branded it, or any of the other Shostakovich music, if that made him more popular with the people.
Well, I think in the West it definitely did. I mean, it became a controversial piece that when all of a sudden everybody was saying, "Well, what is it about this that's so controversial?" And so it started being performed all over Europe right after that. It was a great success, and it's still performed to this day. Metropolitan Opera did it just a few years ago. Did a great production of it. But it was totally banned. It was never performed again during Stalin's lifetime in Russia. And I think, in fact, I don't think it was performed in Shostakovich's lifetime again in Russia. But in the West, it's been performed on a regular basis.
Yeah. So people that sign up for this get their ticket to the Boston Symphony, and then they get a meal on the way, or
Yes. Yes, the whole package. That's the great thing about this is you just show up at the Atheneum. The bus is going to be there. People just get on the bus. We provide the transportation. We have lunch at a nice little restaurant just around the corner from Symphony Hall. Then we go over for the afternoon performance. It's a Friday afternoon. We go over for the afternoon performance, and we have everybody home by probably no later than 7 p.m. So it's a nice day in Boston, and it's a great concert. And so for the price is going to be $185, which seems kind of expensive. But when you think about transportation, you don't have to pay for parking, you don't have to worry about getting into the city, doing all that sort of thing. Lunch is provided, and the concert tickets are provided for you. It's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, it is. So this is going to become a new thing for the Athenaeum to do cultural tours, which the other museums used to do and don't. Yeah. So this is a great opportunity.
I think I think a lot of people really enjoy these trips. Because some people, they don't like to drive. They don't want to deal with the traffic in Boston. Going to Tanglewood, it's nice. Some people don't like to drive at night. So if we go to a night concert, you don't have to worry about that. So and it's also one of the best things about it is it gives people a chance to meet other people who are interested in the same thing you are. For classical music fans, this is a great chance to meet other classical music fans and have a really great experience. And the trip in Tanglewood, it was exactly the case there. There were several people who went on that trip who were new to Westfield. And it gave them a chance to meet other people who had similar interests. So it's really nice that way.
That's fantastic. If you had a dream of other venues that you'd like to run bus tours to, what are some of on the list?
Well, one of the ones I would love to do. It's going to be kind of expensive, but I'm still going to see if we can't pull it off. Is a trip to the Metropolitan Opera in the spring. I would love to organize a trip. People could go in. Maybe we could go to a museum in the afternoon and then go to a concert that night, something like that. Another place I would love to organize a trip to is Glimmerglass, which is in Cooperstown, New York. It's only about 2.5 hours drive, so it's not too bad in terms of the distance. And the summer season there, they do wonderful operas and musicals. And so I would love to organize a trip to Glimmerglass. And then, of course, we want to go to Tanglewood again next summer. Everybody on the trip said, let's do it again next summer. And so we're going to definitely try to organize another trip to Tanglewood.
Well, it's a great program. And, of course, that and all the other programs are available at your website, westath.org.
Yes. And what I try to say to people is check out the website on a regular basis, because we always have new programming coming up, and you never know when you're going to see a program that you just have to come to. So I think people should check that out on a regular basis. And there's a lot of things. I mean, we offer so many different kinds of programs. A little bit of something for everyone.
Yeah, I was noticing, and I actually follow the Athenaeum's programs on Facebook. Because I'm a social media junkie, and I see everything from computer tech classes, which, if somebody could help me with a smartphone, go and do that at the Athenaeum.
Those are very popular. Those tech classes are very popular. I mean, I'm running into this all myself. Is like, trying to stay up on new technology is always a challenge, and the tech classes that we offer, I think, are really helpful for a lot of people. And they help, they do other things too, like people who are looking for jobs, need help putting together a resume or something. Things like this are readily, we're very helpful in getting people to that point where they can get a resume and they can get it out there on the internet so that employers can see it and everything. So, our tech classes are very popular, very popular.
So much happening, and now that the pandemic seems to be behind us, everything is back to full tilt, so to speak, at the Athenaeum.
Yes, we are back to. We're actually doing more programming now than we did prior to the pandemic. We've really geared up. It seems like everybody is eager to get back into doing classes or concerts and other kinds of things. And so we are going full steam ahead with that because, the Atheneum really is the cultural center of Westfield. And we want to make it open for everyone. We want to make it available for everyone, people who have whatever their interests are. We want to find some way to connect with them and have a program for them.
So before we go to a commercial break here to acknowledge the underwriters that make this kind of programming possible, what was the high point of your summer?
The high point of my summer was the weekend at Tanglewood in which Paul Lewis played all five of the piano concertos of Beethoven in one weekend. In over 3 days, he performed all five of these concertos. Paul Lewis is an incredible pianist, and it was so much fun to go to those concerts. Another concert that I really enjoyed at Tanglewood was a concert that featured American music. They did a piece by William Grant Still, one of the great African-American composers of the 20th century, not very well known, but should be better known. He wrote some wonderful symphonies, chamber music, and they performed one of his pieces. The program also had on it Gershwin's American in Paris, which is a wonderful piece of music. Again, a piece that doesn't get performed as much as it should, I think. It's really a it's many times, Gershwin sometimes is looked at as kind of a pop music composer, but it's not. I think that's really a misperception of what he was about. He wrote very, very sophisticated music, but it's very appealing at the same time. I think that's been the problem, is his music is so appealing. Well, it can't be that serious, right? Because it's so beautiful and so fun to listen to his pieces. But the Boston Symphony did a great performance of American in Paris, and I hadn't heard it in years in a live performance, so that was a real treat as well.
Are you a person who sits in the shed, or are you a person that spreads out on the lawn?
I sit in the shed, absolutely. I try to get as close as possible. I bite the bullet and go for a little bit more expensive tickets, even though some of the ones that are really close are like really expensive. But I try to get as close as possible in the shed because I just think you have a much better listening experience there. If I want to do the picnic thing, I do the picnic before. Try to get there early because the Tanglewood grounds are so beautiful. I just love being there in the summer. And you can walk out. They're so large. You can walk out to areas, and no one's around. So it's really nice. So I try to get there a couple of hours early, do my little picnic on the lawn, and then go into the shed for the concert.
That sounds good. I did not make it to Tanglewood this summer. However, the high point of my theater going, and I only saw a handful of things this summer, was Stephen Sondheim's The Little Night Music at Barrington Stage, which was perfection for me. It was one of the best productions I've seen ever, and beautifully cast, beautifully performed, and it was fantastic.
Well, and isn't it great that right here in Western Mass, such great performing arts companies are. I mean, it's amazing what's available in the summer in Western Mass. Sometimes I just astounded in terms of the Jacob's Pillow and the museums and the Berkshires and everything. We have so much available in this area. I feel like I just can't get to everything I want to get to in the summer season because there's just so much going on.
Plus, the summer season seems to have extended itself. Berkshire Theatre Group and Barrington Stage, which used to shut down at Labor Day, and Shakespeare and Company are running into the fall, and Wham Theatre is available in the fall, and Broadway is just around the corner because the Bushnell's Broadway season launches. They had Hamilton this summer, but they're launching next week with Mean Girls. So it's now a 4-season cultural season here in the best place on earth.
Yes, I agree with you. And that's why I always feel at Tanglewood. I went to the last concert last weekend. And it's like, oh boy, I was just so sad to see the season come to an end. And I would love to see Tanglewood stretch into the fall. It seems like to me they should, but of course, I know it's traditionally they've always ended toward the end of August or early September. But boy, would it be nice if they extended the season a couple more weeks.
Well, they say the frost is on the pumpkin when fall is arriving, and who knows, but that could be any minute.
Yeah. You never know. But with the way things have been going, I think they could definitely go into September and still have wonderful weather there. Even though there was one concert I went to this summer at Tanglewood, it got really cool. I was very cold by the second half of the concert. Because it cools off in the evening in the Berkshires quite often. Most of the concerts, even at 10 o'clock at night, it was still very warm. But there was one evening that it got really cool, and it's like, okay, this is a little cold for my blood.
Yeah, and you're not allowed to pitch a campfire on the lawn.
No, that's right.
Exactly. We're going to take a break to acknowledge our underwriters. We'll be back with more Atheneum Spotlight. Peter Coles is our chief engineer today. We're chatting with Guy McLain, and I'm Mark Auerbach, so don't go away.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Dunkin' Donut Shops of Westfield and the Sardinia family. It's nice to know that even as the world changes, Dunkin' Coffee remains the same at 7 convenient locations throughout Westfield.
Support for community radio on WSKB is provided by Betts Plumbing and Heating Supply Company, an independent, family-owned wholesaler serving Westfield for over 50 years, specializing in plumbing, heating, and industrial piping supplies. On the web at bettsplumbing.com or at 14 Coleman Avenue in Westfield.
This is Ken Stomsky from Ken's Den on WCPC 15 and 89.5 FM, Tuesdays, 8 to 10.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB.
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Welcome back to Atheneum Spotlight, everyone. Peter Coles is our chief engineer today. We're chatting with Guy McLain, who's the director of the Westfield Atheneum. I'm Mark Auerbach. If you've missed a part of today's program, or you want to play it again or share it with your friends, it's archived along with all of our other programming on YouTube at WSKB Community Radio. And Guy, I took a break this summer for almost 4 weeks. Peter Coles went away and we programmed a lot of, some people say, well, those summer reruns, but I wanted to call them encore presentations and elevate the language a little bit. And we reran some of the Atheneum Spotlight programs, and people that missed them didn't realize how much the Atheneum is doing for Westfield and everyone else, everything from MOSO concerts to art exhibits. And in the second half of today's program, we get to talk with one of the great artists in our region,
Yes.
Laura Radwell, whose art is going to be on display at the Atheneum.
Yes, we're really excited. It's a beautiful exhibit. I really enjoyed putting it all together. Her art is just beautiful, so colorful. I mean, the colors are just amazing. Her paintings just pop off the wall. As I was walking into the Atheneum and looking, and then looked to the right into the Rand Gallery where the art exhibit is. It just her paintings just are so vibrant. They're just amazing, and so it's going to be great to talk to her in the second half of the program. I'm really looking forward to that.
How long will her exhibit be up at the Atheneum?
Her exhibit is up until the end of October, so it gives people plenty of time to see the exhibit. What we're doing, a lot of galleries, they only have they'll feature an artist for just a month. We felt like that's not really a great situation. So we are featuring our artists for at least 2 months at a time because it gives people a chance to get in. People's schedules are busy, and so we want to make sure people can get in to see the exhibits. And then also, too, I think it's always a great idea if you see an artist, if you see an exhibit that you really like, it's good to come back and see it again. Think about it, kind of evaluate what you're seeing, and then come back to it, and I think with a 2-month run, It allows people to come back and visit it. The previous exhibit we had, the Art of Ruth Kerr, I had several people come up to me and said, I came in and saw the exhibit. I was so moved by it. I brought back my children to see it, or I brought back a friend to see it. Several people told me that. So that's what we're doing. That's the way we're going to plan our exhibits in the future, is to have them run at least 2 months at a time.
One of the things you did with that exhibit, and also some of the art that you have in your catalog that you exhibit on a regular basis, you did a couple of videos that described the Ruth Kerr exhibit and pointed out some of the features of the various pictures, as well as the things that you own that are part of the permanent collection.
Yes.
Will you be doing some video work with the Laura Radwell exhibit?
Absolutely. We did do a video, and this time we went to Laura's studio and actually filmed the video right in her studio. So that adds a really nice dimension to the exhibit. And if people come into the exhibit, we have a television screen right there in the exhibit area where people can watch the video of our visit to the studio, which was really, I have to say, it was amazing. Going into her studio and seeing all her work there was just an incredible experience for me.
I can't wait to chat with her, because I've known Laura for years before she got into the artwork, and she was doing art, marketing and public relations and designing brochures.
Yes.
And things. And her career began up here. She was the marketing and public relations person for Mount Tom ski area way back when that was the place to go locally.
Yeah.
And her work is absolutely gorgeous. And I have been to her studio before and seen her work it's in permanent exhibits in many places.
Yeah.
And one of the things I had mentioned the last time I had her on the show, I was in an accident and spent several months in rehab learning to walk again. And the Sosin Rehab Center, which is part of the Jewish Geriatric Services campus, has a couple of Laura Radwell paintings in the facility. And I remember that one of the first days I went to physical therapy, and I looked at this wall hanging and I said, my gosh, that's Laura Radwell's work. I mean, it's very identifiable.
Yes.
But her use of color, to me, and I'm not a connoisseur of visual arts, but her use of color is just astounding.
And her paintings can be very dramatic. On top of the fact that, on top of the paintings that are always very vibrant in their colors, she does these wonderful lyrical lines and gestures on the paintings that just make them such an intriguing experience just to stand in front of and look at for a while, and connect to the kind of the emotional content that she puts together in her paintings.
Are any of the things that are going to be a part of the Atheneaum exhibit new works that the public may never have seen before?
Oh, I think a lot of this work are things that have never been on exhibit before. We can ask her about that when we interview her. Let's ask her about how much. I'm not sure exactly how much of it is, but my impression was that a lot of this work is new. And another thing it'd be great to ask her about is she did a whole series, a whole section of the exhibit is her digital work, where she worked from an iPad, used iPad software, and created these wonderful works. Again, very beautiful, very colorful, from the use of an iPad, a new technology that's becoming very, very popular. So I think we'll have to ask her about those too.
We will, and we're going to go to a break relatively soon. We've got a couple of minutes here. But before we do, what's on your wish list this fall of things that Guy McLain wants to go do?
Well, I want to get into New York and see a couple of the shows that are coming out. I want to go to the Metropolitan Opera. They have a couple of great operas that are coming up. They're doing a new version of La Traviata, which I think will be really interesting. Several other productions that I think will be interesting. So I'm looking forward to making my journey into New York. I didn't get into New York, because of course the epidemic. I haven't been back in New York for quite a while. So I want to get there and see some of the shows in New York City. So that's my big plan.
Yeah, I went to New York in May with a couple of friends. We went to see Funny Girl. And we all have tickets to go the Wednesday after Thanksgiving to see the new musical Some Like It Hot, which is based on the movie with Marilyn Monroe and Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon. And it's written, the music and lyrics are written by the guys that wrote Hairspray.
Yes.
So there is a video floating around on YouTube of the title song called Some Like It Hot, and it stars Christian Morrell. And that's my New York trip for the fall.
That sounds
in
really
October.
fun. That
Can't
sounds
wait
like a
to
good
go.
one, yeah.
Can't wait to go. And it's so
Yeah.
easy to go into the city for the day.
Right. Yeah, I usually just drive down, go down right down the West Side Highway, right down the west side of Manhattan, find a parking place, and then head for either the theater I'm going to or the Metropolitan Opera.
And there are
wherever.
these new apps that you can install on your phone that will tell you where the parking's available, and you can reserve in a garage before you go.
Yeah, which is really nice. I haven't used one of those yet, but I have heard about that.
We did that. We got a parking space right next door to the August Wilson Theater when we went to see Funny Girl. Literally pulled in, the space was available for us, and then went and grabbed lunch, saw a matinee, got in the car, sat on the West Side Highway in rush hour. And,
Yes.
that's how it works.
Yeah. The West Side Highway, usually the traffic is pretty bad, but
Yeah.
one thing, if you go to a night production, by the time the production's out and you're ready to leave New York, the West Side Highway is usually not too bad. At 10 or 11 o'clock at night. So.
Yeah, well, of course, we plan it when we go for matinees. We drive to New Haven on the way back because there's a really great deli called Katz's Deli in New Haven. So you come back and either do that or go for pizza. I mean, it makes a New York trip perfect.
Yeah. A little place to stop on the way to break up the trip back, right?
Right.
Yeah.
We're going to take a break. We're going to acknowledge our underwriters that make this program possible, and we'll be back with more Atheneum Spotlight. Peter Coles is our chief engineer. I'm Mark Auerbach. Guy McLain is here, and we'll all return in just a moment.
Underwriting for Community Radio on WSKB is brought to you in part by Rockies. Over 30 convenient locations throughout Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Connecticut, and Florida. One of the nation's largest ACE dealers. Expertise and great product selection in paint, hardware, lawn and garden. That's Rockies. Rock solid service since 1926. On the web at rockies.com.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Dunkin' Donut Shops of Westfield and the Sardinia family. It's nice to know that even as the world changes, Dunkin' Coffee remains the same at 7 convenient locations throughout Westfield.
Hi, it's Bob Plass, and I have Wow, It's Tuesday, every Tuesday, 6 to 8. Wow, it's Tuesday.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB.
I did it!
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
We're back with more Atheneum Spotlight here on Westfield Community Programming Channel 15, 89.5 FM WSKB, and our media partners at Southwick Community Programming. Peter Coles is our chief engineer. I'm Mark Auerbach, joined by Guy McLain, and our guest this half hour is the artist Laura Radwell, whose works are about to be on display at the Westfield Atheneum. And as I said in the first half hour, Guy, Laura and I go way back to the days when she was designing brochures and setting up parties and all kinds of good things for Mount Town ski area. And Laura, it's always good to see you.
And it's always great to see you, Mark, and I hope that never changes for a long time to come.
Sounds good to me. So Guy's been kind of hinting at the first half hour of today's program about how excited he is about this upcoming exhibit, and he sent a crew over to your studio to film a kind of like a preview of the exhibit in your studio while you were working. So give us a little bit of insight as to the exhibition that you're bringing to the Atheneum. Are these new works never before seen, or would some of it be called the very best of Laura Radwell?
Oh, that's such an interesting question. To which there are several answers. From one standpoint, I think that there are works that are among what I think are the best, some of the best paintings that I've done. And so they're not new in the sense of whatever one might consider new. I didn't do them in the last couple of months. But as well, there is a group of digital archival limited edition prints that occupy one side of the gallery. And this is work that nobody has ever seen before. And I am so honored that Guy was welcoming to this body of work, because it feels very holistic. I've mostly been painting for the last 8 years, but alongside of the painting, I've been doing this other work that I don't talk about and I haven't really shown anyone. And it does relate to my painting in many ways. There are many characteristics that they both share. And so seeing them together in a room, the paintings and the digital work, it just feels incredible. It feels, as they say, everyone wants to be seen for who they are. And this is a very good example of that. I really feel seen.
And Guy, how did you and Laura connect? How do you know each other and know each other's work?
Well, I live in East Hampton, and I stay up on the East Hampton art scene. And of course, Laura has a great studio in the Cottage Street building in East Hampton, and so I've been seeing her exhibits over the years, and felt like, I was just so impressed with how wonderful her work was, how colorful, how vivid the paintings were, that I just thought we've got to get her down to the Atheneaum. We have a space that I think will really show her work well, and I think that's really true. I think our gallery is just perfect for showing Laura's paintings, and so I was really excited to be able to twist her arm and get her to put together an exhibit for us there.
And
Well, I wouldn't say you twisted my arm. I was very honored to be asked, and I'm very happy to be there.
Laura, I know that you exhibit all over the place, and not only in your own studio but in other galleries around. Do you have a chance? Is the Atheneum like unique in the fact that it's a local exhibition, or do you do other local exhibitions over the course of a year?
I do other local exhibitions. I think the Atheneum is unique in that it's so particularly beautiful. It has such grace, and it's such a dignified space, and it's far more beautiful than many of the other places that I've been in.
Isn't that true? I mean, I think one of the problems, a lot of the galleries that are around the area that put together exhibits, many times the spaces are relatively small, storefronts or what have you. And I think one thing that's nice about the Atheneum is it's a bigger, kind of grander space. And I think that's really nice for showing artists, especially, I think a lot of contemporary artists are doing bigger paintings than what was done in the past. And I think it's, we need larger spaces for showing what some artists are doing. And I think one thing that's great is just the number of works we're showing in this exhibit is probably more than what you normally have been able to show in other exhibits. Is that the case?
Absolutely. It's at least 2, if not 3 times as many pieces of work as I normally show. And it's because the space allows it and the space invites it, and the uniqueness of the library furnishings, the glass cases on one end of the room really were a bit of a challenge to think about before I figured out what I was going to put in this exhibit and what Guy wanted me to put in the exhibit, because I don't paint small. To your point, Guy, I'm now painting on much larger surfaces than I was when I started out, and I did not have the kind of work that could have filled those cases. And then it occurred to me, wait a minute, I have this whole other side of me, and maybe I could make use of that. So it's been very exciting. And the other thing about the gallery that makes it special, and I should say every other gallery is beautiful because galleries are filled with beauty, But this particular gallery also has a sense of history. It's an older building, and if you read about the building, you learn about the history of the building, and that makes it kind of special.
That's I'm glad you point that out, because it's one thing that's really nice about the tradition at the Atheneum. That particular section of the Atheneum was built in 1927, and there are artists who've displayed in there since that time. Many of wonderful Western Massachusetts artists started exhibiting there in the late 20s and the 1930s. We have paintings in the Atheneum collection that come from exhibits that took place in that space in the 1920s and 1930s, which is really exciting. So there's a wonderful tradition of regional artists displaying in the Atheneum, and so Laura's adding to that tradition with her exhibit, which is really nice.
I don't know when the two of you decided that Laura's work would show up at the Atheneum, but once that decision was made, Laura, how long does it take you to prepare an exhibition for a show like this?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that particular question, because I was thinking about a communication to my mailing list last evening, and I thought, I'm going to make this about what goes into preparing an exhibit, because the amount of time and energy that has gone into this exhibit is probably far greater than any other exhibit I've ever done. And it's been an incredible mountain to climb, I should say. It's been exciting. It's been it kept me on my toes, running around. But it does take a lot of thinking. I spent a lot of time in my studio looking around and imagining which paintings would go in a room together, how to actually go around the walls. And I go to the space first and I take a look. I eyeball the measurements. Sometimes I take actual measurements. And this goes on for a number of months, actually. And again, the glass cases at the end of the room were a challenge. And for the first time, I have printed a body of work of limited edition prints. And that involves finding the printer, choosing the paper, finding the archival components for the mats, for the back of the mats. There's a whole list of details that probably, there are scores of details, I should say. And it's very satisfying. It was incredibly exciting yesterday morning when Guy and his crew came to pick up the work, which is also a very special thing to happen, because most often I'm transporting the work. So that was really a wonderful gift. Thank you. And it also required a new level of trust on my part, because handling the paintings is something that has to be done very carefully, or they can be damaged. It's canvas. Most of them are canvas, and canvas can sustain injury pretty easily. And it's not finished yet. I still have, like you, Mark, I'm a social media junkie. That's how the word has gotten out about my work over the past several years. And so now my last challenge here is communicating with my audience and how to do that. And that is not as simple as writing a few words and posting it, because I'm visual and I will make visual communications for the various media.
I'm glad we're talking about this, because I think probably most people don't realize just what goes into putting together an exhibit like this. There's a lot of thinking that has to happen, and on our end, on the Atheneum end, it involved all the planning process of when to schedule it, when was the best time to have the exhibit, doing our own publicity. Have our public relations librarian started working on this 2 months ago. Our social media librarian has been working on this, and then our crew, to hang the exhibit, all the decisions about where is the best place to put these paintings, because there's a relationship. Each painting next to another painting, there's a certain relationship that develops, and so it's very important to make decisions. It's not like we just go in there and throw a painting up on the wall. We really have to think about where everything is placed and where it's going to be exhibited most successfully, and show what Laura is trying to accomplish with her paintings in the best possible light. And that's why I think the digital work is very, very interesting, because this is a whole new area that artists are starting to explore. Laura's kind of on the cutting edge of working with digital prints, and so it's really exciting to have that. But we had to really think about how to display that work. And I have to say, I think the work really looks great in those cases. It's amazing. It's always a challenge. Every artist we've had, that's always been a challenge of what to do with the cases that are on one side of the room. Well, Laura's work just looks wonderful in those cases. I'm really excited about that.
Laura, I mean, some of these works are works that you've had around, and some of them you're creating for this exhibit. And all the while this is happening, we are emerging from a pandemic. How did the pandemic impact your thoughts towards what you're putting out there, and has it changed? I mean, not only from what you want people to see or feel necessarily, but how you feel, and the renewal of the energy that you may have after being cooped up for 2 years, taking an exhibit and putting it out in the public.
That's a large question.
I know. I
many
ask big questions.
The pandemic, for me, as I'm sure it was for many others, was kind of a shutdown or a lockdown initially, because there was so much uncertainty about what was happening. Our building actually went through a lockdown, and so for I think 3 months I didn't have access to my studio. So I brought some materials to my home and set up one of the spare bedrooms, but it was not the same. My studio is quite large, and I'm used to that atmosphere. And I did a number of works in the home studio, and it felt good. It satisfied that part of me that feels calm and peaceful when I'm painting. But I'd say overall, the pandemic affected my productivity, not in a necessarily good way. But within the last year, I found renewed energy, and I started to paint. What was coming out, however, were paintings of a different ilk. They were calmer and more serene and more peaceful than what preceded them. And the way I interpret that is that I was seeking a peaceful place, and it came from inside me out onto the canvas. And so the content of the paintings really went through a shift. And some of these paintings are in the show, and will be on the walls. You will see those, and they will be side by side with some of the paintings from a previous period of time prior to the pandemic.
Yeah, and I think it's good. Now we're talking about kind of some of the themes that you take on, and I think it's interesting that I've talked to a lot of artists and how they reacted to the pandemic, and it seemed like there's a whole range of responses. But to me, what's very interesting is there seems to be such a great continuity in your work. Your work has a certain variety to it, but it has a continuity that I think is very effective. To me, maybe you could talk a little bit about kind of some of your influences, some of the things that you feel kind of influenced your work, especially over the last few years as we've dealt with a very difficult time.
Well, I think that the biggest influence over the past few years has been the external environment. Both the environment itself. I have long been concerned about climate change, and as a lover of nature and a athlete in my earlier life, I really came to embrace so many things about nature that have been deposited in me, that are ingrained in me, and to be concerned about the fact that this is threatened is quite disturbing. It's quite disturbing. So, in one sense, the act of painting with a strong influence of landscape is a type of perhaps preservation. It's a preservation instinct, because I don't paint dystopian landscapes. I paint landscapes that are welcoming, colorful, and have a certain kind of appeal. I'm not picturing the very threat that I fear, the effect of climate change. And then as well, externally, the political landscape has been jarring in many ways. The extreme divisiveness in the country upsets me, and there is a body of work that, well, I've done periodically after a previous election. I won't say which one. I started painting without so much color. I painted more. I used somber colors and toned down colors, and I did a whole series of paintings, and I thought nobody will ever be interested in these paintings because they don't have my characteristic bright color. And yet, I think I just sold the last one of the series, and it was a series about 12 or 18 paintings. It was somewhere in that range. And there was some appeal to them, in spite of the fact that they weren't the traditional colorful paintings that I do. So, and that goes to another point, which you and I have talked about, Guy, is how the viewer experiences this work. And because we're all so different as individuals, we go on different journeys, or we go nowhere. We don't respond. But if we respond, we either respond to something superficial, and I mean by that I mean the surface, the color on the surface, and how come there are green clouds and not white clouds and a blue sky. But a viewer can also take another deeper journey, and because color promotes introspection and contemplation. So I hope that regardless of whether the colors are the bright colors, the bright happy colors, or the more somber colors, that there is a place for someone to go when looking at the work.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that's very effective and very moving in your paintings is you bring a certain kind of emotional expression to your work, but you allow a lot of room, it seems to me, for the viewer to come in and contemplate these paintings and and bring their own experiences. I think that's one of the things that's strongest about your paintings is your paintings create a kind of an atmosphere or kind of a place that allows a viewer to explore their own feelings and emotions and things like that. And I think that's one of the most effective things about your paintings. And it's very interesting, a lot of your paintings kind of evoke landscape scenes or things like that, but because they're so, the colors are so independent, and some aspects of it, I mean, in some cases, one viewer might see it as a landscape, another viewer might see it as something else. I think that's really wonderful. And I'm just intrigued on how you're able to do that in such a variety of ways, because to me that's very, very hard. It seems to me it's so difficult at times to not get too specific. An artist not get too specific to allow to create a work that allows the viewer to bring their own experience. I wonder if you could comment on that.
Well, I guess I do it by not trying to do it. I think it is what happens when I approach the canvas. And I do not use photographic references, and I'm not a plein air painter. It's too, for reasons I won't go into, difficult for me to carry my equipment and sit outside or find locations. So I'm a studio painter, and I'm painting from the inside out. And the results, when I started painting seriously in 2014, I've been as surprised by the results maybe as others have. I wasn't sure where I was headed, but all the influences that I have accumulated over the years from mostly nature and these other factors that I mentioned are coming out in ways that look like places that may or may not be real. And Saul Leiter from the 19th century, he was a famous photographer, and he introduced, I think he worked a lot on color in the middle of the 20th century, but he was also a painter. And I tripped on an exhibit of his in Vienna a number of years ago. And the exhibit also was one of these very holistic showings, because they included both his astonishing photographs and his paintings. And I'll never forget this quote. He said, it is not where it is or what it is that matters, it's how you see it. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I love the spontaneous aspect. One of the things we've talked a lot about the color and this sort of thing, but another thing that I love in your paintings is the lyrical gestures that many times, kind of scan across the canvas. I wonder how you go about approaching that, because it seems like to me, my guess is you probably put down a layer of color and work with that, and then the gestures are a second go at the painting, you might say. Can you tell us a little bit about that, about your process on creating those paintings?
Well, yes, as you just described, I take a blank canvas and I lay down a field of color, a color field, if you would. And it's sometimes ranges from light, sunny, happy colors to medium tone colors to dark colors. In this particular case, in some of the paintings that are on the walls now in the gallery, I use a dark ground. And the second thing that I do is I give myself permission to pick up a crayon, a piece of charcoal, a pencil, an oil stick, and make marks, make lines, make gestures. And I can't really say where those come from, but I could only imagine they just come from that one moment of spontaneity. Just allow yourself to be loose. And there's a lot of discussion in art about loosen up, loosen up. So this is the loosest moment. And then once I have a field of color and I have some of these gestural marks, I am in a particular color mood in a particular day, and I will mix a palette of color, and then I will start applying the color. And I'm not exactly sure what it will, where it will go, but each step takes me to the next step, and then it starts to congeal, it starts to form something, and everything becomes extremely intentional and sometimes very challenging, sometimes not as challenging. And as I think I've also said, some paintings fall into place in a session or two of painting, and some paintings take months and many returns.
I have a question, Laura. How much time during the day can you devote to your painting, thinking about a painting, revising something that you've started? And how much of the time of the day do you spend setting up exhibitions and seeing other people's work? It can't really be possible for you to spend 24 hours a day painting when there's so many other things that go into it.
My wish list is I would like more time to actually be painting and less time to have to think about everything else that goes along with it. And that's not a complaint. I'm extremely grateful that there's interest in people seeing my work, and this is part of the deal. I like to be in my studio painting several times a week. But again, not every day is a painting day. Some days I have to do the behind the scenes work, and some days I'm just not in the mood to paint. And but I try to capture the muse, if I might say, when it's there, and I'll drop everything and I'll be at the studio and I will paint.
Yeah,
So
that is a problem. These days. Artists, they have to consider social media, and publicity and administrative functions and this sort of thing. It's too bad that's the reality, isn't it? Because it does take away from the painting. But it sounds like to me you've been able to find a good balance of time to work on your paintings and not. Another question, one artist I talked to once said to me when she was asked how long it takes to do a painting, and she said, "Well, are you counting the time that I'm actually putting paint on the canvas, or are you talking about the time that I'm staring at the canvas trying to figure out what to put on there?" I wonder if you have the same experience. If sometimes you're staring at the canvas and you spend a lot of time staring at it trying to figure out what to do next.
well, yes, that certainly is true. And um, I'll never forget that a famous artist once told me, if you're ever asked that question, say, "It took me my whole lifetime to get to this point where I could do this." So all of the above.
Laura, we're out of time, but I want to thank you for being here today. I can't wait to see the exhibition. It's at the Westfield Atheneum in Westfield, westath.org. Correct?
Yes, indeed.
And it's there now through into the end of October. So while you're running around and about in Westfield, a great opportunity to see Laura Radwell's work in a beautiful gallery. And this wraps up another edition of Atheneum Spotlight with Guy McLain. Our special guest today, Laura Radwell. Peter Coles has been our chief engineer. If you've missed a part of today's program, you want to watch it again, share it with friends. It's archived at WSKB Community Radio's YouTube page. Peter Coles has been our chief engineer today. I'm Mark Auerbach. We'll be back in about 3 weeks with another Atheneum Spotlight.